Hi, hello. Welcome to the fourth part of the series about connection doula care. Um, and a lot of in the previous few conversations, how we got to here, and now we're going to talk about more about what here is, and really what it means to redefine life as a series of sacred thresholds that deserve to be witnessed and held and tended to. I talked about this a little bit in a previous conversation, but every culture throughout history has understood very deeply the importance of something we've forgotten, and that, life is a series of deaths and rebirths, and that each threshold deserves to be witnessed. I talked a bit about coming of age ceremonies and birth ceremonies and postpartum ceremonies and all sorts of other things. And, we still definitely hold the ritual of marriage in some cultures, and there's things like baby showers, but I'm talking like a deep witnessing of what the change that occurs. And I think I know in my experience and in watching folks how much changes when they are held and what more becomes possible, and how watching transformation unfold, as opposed to folks who are birthing things without that support and without being held. And so, we got lost, and we get lost, and then we find our way back, and we got lost and started to treat transitions like problems, or like things to avoid, or like brace against, rather than like portals that we can all cross together. And we have like in our bones this really ancient knowing that thresholds matter, and portals matter. And it's not just that people need a doula at birth or at death or at an abortion. People need a doula at all of the changes of life. And so it's really our job, I think, as we collectively imagine what the next iteration of the world will be like, and what it'll mean to come out on the other side of this collective portal that we're in right now, that can feel so dense and challenging, that divorce, career changes, friendship endings, Saturn returns, creative projects are all births in themselves. When we allow ourselves to see them as births, and we don't try to avoid the change they bring, we can really honor what we need to be held in them, what we can ask of ourselves, what we can ask of others, how we can be a resource. And when we do that, we deepen that transformation. And as I mentioned before, when we allow ourselves to do that change, and to endure that change, and to learn from that change, we then become more prepared and more tethered to support others in change, and to support others in their deepening of presence in life, their deepening of honesty with their lives and with who they are. And when we do that, the ripple effects are huge. And then eventually the world is able to move together with more honesty and with more depth and with more clarity. Because think, if there are 8 billion of us and we're constantly all bracing against change, but that change is coming because we need to be changed in order to transform the world, that's so much avoidance every day. And that's so much lost opportunity and lost potential for allowing life to flow through us and to be witnessed. And change, requires community. I think about, I live in Vermont, and we've had flooding for the last 3 summers, and that changes the landscape, and it changes people's lives, and it changes people's homes, and disappears some people's homes. And the thing that we all need to do is come together in that, right? And to hold each other in that. And you can't get through changes like that without each other. And that's true in our individual examples and in the collective examples of, like, it takes all of us to allow change and to witness change together and be seen in it together. And for some reason it comes to mind too. I think it's because I was doing a storytelling program earlier this week, and we were talking about, specifically in healthcare settings, that, when there is an adverse outcome and somebody dies in a hospital setting in an unexpected way, what the family most often wants is for the people who are there to be able to tell them what happened and to be able to apologize. But because of how litigious our society is, physicians and care providers are forbidden from apologizing, because apologizing is admitting wrongdoing, right? And all those families want, is not, in many cases, is not, a lawsuit or something. What they want is to be witnessed in their pain, and to be seen in how painful that was, and to be given, that human connection that's necessary to, like, catalyze the change on the other side of deep loss or deep change. There's if all of these thresholds that we sometimes see as ordinary transitions, or things where it's like, we hear like basic advice like, well, however long you were together in years is the amount of months it will take to get over them or something and after a breakup. And it's like, that's just like making a formula for something that is so unformulaic, and it doesn't allow for a breakup to lead to, deep learning and things like that. Instead, it's just like watching your calendar to, tick by the 90 days to until you can date again or something. And so when we see transitions and thresholds as ordinary, we lose this deep, deep opportunity to know ourselves more, know each other more, and be held and seen and form community around just also normalize the turning toward and the allowing loss or transition to be really fruitful times and beautiful times and generative times. We lose all of that when we turn away from it. And like, as I've said 1,000 times, like that's what the world needs most from us right now. And when we rush through them, we get robbed of their gifts, and we rob ourselves of our gifts, and we rob our communities of the gifts we would have learned had we experienced them fully. But it's too tender and too real to go through them alone. And so that's why we have to have a doula there to hold us and when I say hold us, I don't mean necessarily physically. A lot of, connection doula support is done virtually, but I mean just like to hold our vision and hold our reality and not try to fix it or tweak it or optimize it, but just let it be true and look at ways to map ourselves as forward so that we are resourced enough to fully witness our own transformation and the gifts that want to be given to us. And we feel a difference in our body, right? When we talk about like enduring change and that sort of like grip on and hold on and like scary like endurance of change, as opposed to the opportunity to be transformed by it and to like be reborn by it, right? There's a very different feeling when you think of those two words, like white knuckle versus, possibility and transformation and alchemy and all these other things that are possible when we don't try to, one, go through things alone, and just like sort of walk into the void alone. And two, when we don't try to just, say, have some sort of formula or like hack or something to get through challenging time. So, what does this look like in daily life? Like what is doula energy? What is being doula in daily life? Like, there's some principles of doula support of deep witnessing, trust. There's so much trust in doula support of, what you need to be well. You know what you need to thrive. We just have to peel away and get back to what those things are. There isn't a directing energy or a telling energy. There's a witnessing and an encouragement to follow your body's wisdom, follow your intuitive wisdom. If you've lost thread of your intuition, what practices can we do to get you back into them? And another, I think beautiful thing about having a doula for life's thresholds is having someone there to hold uncertainty and messiness. Like I think messes are crucial. Some of the most messy parts of birth are also the parts where someone is born or water breaks and other fluids come out in preparation that makes space for that birth. And that as a metaphor for every other part of life is having a doula there who's I'm really comfortable with the mess. I find the mess intriguing because I've seen time and time again what happens when we witness that mess and let it be one. And, I think so often when we're in a mess, like if I think of people in birth who are in transition and they're like, fuck this, I'm not doing it, get me out of here. I completely understand. But I, as a doula, know that that means they're close to having, to the birth happening. And so like, that's true then, so often when we want to say, no, get me out, I'm tapping out, I'm done, is when we actually can turn and look at that mess, is when the most potential is there. And we are so close to the change and so close to the potential and so close to what can come of that change. And so it's just really a practice of turning toward the mess. And you need a witness in that because like I need one too. I also need to be delivered through things because when it's my own mess, I'm like, I want to clean this up. I don't want this mess. Like I'm going to do everything I can to just get this out. But that's not, I miss out on so much of that. But when I allow myself to be witnessed and held and supported, then I can let the mess be a mess and see what it wants from me and see what it wants to teach me without trying to like prematurely clean it out. Because like you don't clean up the delivery room before the baby's there, And so there's this difference, right, in between like self-help and coaching and doulaing. And the difference is, there's a difference between like advice giving of the self-help side of things of do this and follow this checklist and you will get here and do this, da, da, da. And then the difference there, and then the other difference is presence. Doulas I bring presence of just like witnessing alongside you, asking really thoughtful questions about, your expertise already in yourself and what you've needed in past times and what you might need now and things like that. And in that comes a really important distinction too, is I'm not trying to, as your doula across life's changes, I'm not trying to fix your problems. I'm honoring and supporting your autonomy and your knowledge and your wisdom and the wisdom of your ancestors and the practices of your wisdom. And so those are some of the differentiators and the ways that doula support shows up across all of life changes when I offer it through as my connection doula services. And the beauty of it is, as I've mentioned a few times, is that like as I doula you through difficult moments or change or creativity, you learn yourself how to, and that trust is strengthened, and you get closer and closer to being being able to offer that to other folks. And as you do that to other folks, they will learn too and be able to offer it back to you. So it's like this really like rippled thing, because like there's no set of hard skills, or again, no checklist or no formula. It's more so just like this way of being and this way of living and this way of witnessing and holding that turns into doula support specifically for changes. And in this way, we build these networks of support that sort of like hold rather than fix. And like that holding is what's, again, like we have our own changes and transformations to hold. And then when we look at the world stage, like big change obviously needs to happen, right? So much needs to change. And that makes this work both personal and collective and political. It makes it a very accessing that power that you've been cut off from by keeping you in a surface level self-help industrial complex is dangerous to establishments, right? Because you're going to realize your power and how much you, when you have the support of somebody else, can endure and learn and alchemize, and we become very powerful. And in this way, we create our own systems of reciprocity and care and witnessing. And those systems then can't be infiltrated or depended on, on oppressive systems. We become very sovereign when we do this kind of work for each other. It's the work of sovereignty. You came into this world through a threshold that deserved doula support, and maybe there was one there, maybe not. And you're going to leave this world in over a threshold that deserves doula support. Every single meaningful threshold in between there also deserves doula support, because it is the work of strengthening our resilience and our ability to change and our flexibility. And I can't think of any more important work right now for ourselves, for each other. It is crucial that in this moment we come back to from a place of looking outward for expertise and fixing and all of these things, to looking inward to sovereignty, and how that sovereignty then like intertwines us and entangles us with others as well. And so in connection to Lucert, I use healing of all 5 elements and just all these other toolboxes we can create to make sure that you know all of your tools, and you know what resonates with you, and you know what holds you and witnesses you alongside me, your witness, and others. And so thank you for staying till the 4th conversation. And just a reminder that I offer month-to-month transition doula support called Connection Doula Support for any of life's thresholds. And it's not therapy, it's not coaching, and it's not anything that's ever going to promise to fix you. It's a presence and a witness that allows transformation to unfold naturally and safely and powerfully, and with your own trust and your own wisdom. So feel free to reach out. There's a link below to learn more. Thank you so much for being here and staying till the end. Have a beautiful day, and I hope to connect more soon.